You're a detective, Mr. Mason.
It's a fancy word for a busybody, but yes.
It's very easy for you to break the rules, isn't it?
Susan, you and your husband, Robert Downey Jr., are producers on this, but you were originally sort of developing this with him for him. Can you still see that version of the show in your head? Or are you like completely invested in this? And then I was wondering if you can, how it would be different or how you'd imagined it originally.
I mean, at this point, like Robert has a saying, and he has said this for years and years. He feels that actors get the parts they're meant to get. And we did originally develop it first as a feature, and then even early on in the television development with an eye for him. It was always going to be about where we landed and when we were going to do it. And when the schedules didn't align, and we got talking about Matthew, and he so embodied Perry, that as Robert and I have been watching the dailies to the cuts to the finals, like, no, we cannot picture another version of Perry Mason. You know, Matthew is Perry Mason. He brought something to it, and, you know, his range is absolutely incredible. There is a dark, brooding quality to him that is so authentic, and then there is something very light and playful when he needs to turn that on, and that is the only version of Perry that I could possibly imagine at this point. So, yeah, I mean, Matthew is Perry.
Worst thing you ever seen.
What do you know what I've seen?
We do what we don't like when there's a greater good to be served. You more than anyone should know that.
I live in LA. When I watch shows are set in like a vintage LA, what the challenges are to filming there, because so much has changed. There's still a lot of older stuff, you know. E.B.'s house, for instance, is beautiful. Was on Frank's. But like, you know, when you shoot on that bridge in the final episode, it's like, they had to take out all the background, like all the houses, all the stuff like that. What were some of the challenges to filming in contemporary LA?
I really have shot in LA, believe it or not. And I wanted to come here and find places like no one's ever seen before. They would show me places and I go, come on, how many times has this been shot? Well, then they would name like 30 films. And so there's really very few places that hadn't been shot or neighborhoods. But it's just like, what became important was putting your actors in those worlds and how you compositionally were doing your visual storytelling, which made them different. I mean, yeah, Moose's and Frank's, like we made that 2 locations within the story. It's very economical, but it was thrilling because we didn't make it about, we're going to show you LA in the 30s. No, it was about, we're going to tell a scene, an intimate scene, and you're going to feel LA, both sort of on an oral level, and will imply scope. Sometimes we opened it up, but not really very often, and with some help of visual effects. But you know, that's a pleasure to do that for all of us who love doing this.
If you're a fan of the original show, are there any homages besides character names that fans can look for? There's a little bit about no one ever really breaks on the stand that I thought was kind of clever.
We actually went back more to the source material, which were the original books that Earl Stanley Gardner wrote. We really didn't take a lot of cues from the Raymond Burr series. That worked incredibly well for the time period. Obviously, it was wildly popular and hours and hours, and it was like the first hour-long weekly series. But it wasn't going to work for a modern audience. And so, like you said, there are definitely names, but those names are probably from the book. And there is that one line that you aptly caught. But other than that, you know, we did take more of the spirit of who that character was back in the books, the slightly scrappier version of him, who was willing to work in all the gray areas of the law. And even then, we had to invent because Earl Stanley Gardner didn't give us a lot about who Perry was in the past and what made him how he was, which I think is what more of a modern audience craves to understand, to get invested in somebody. But I do think we managed to maintain the spirit of the character and the type of crimes he dove into.
I'm just about out of moods.
You said just about out of moods. So what's the move?
Solid ground.